Hello, welcome back again. It's a monster workshop. We're doing more monsters, making more creatures, and we've been doing a lot of that for Dungeons & Dragons 5e 2024, and now we're moving on to Shadowdark, which is just another version of Dungeons & Dragons, just a little bit different, and that there's a lot less rules, really. That's really the bulk of it. I wouldn't say there's much more to it than that. And I'm really been looking forward to doing this because they're a lot more fun to make, frankly. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll. Get your ideas ready. Grab some food, some drink. Make sure you are comfortable. And we'll get straight into this. Okay? Should be an interesting live stream. I don't expect this to take me too long. We should be able to get through everything we need to in a fairly timely manner. Okay. All right, we've done that. Let's get cracking, shall we? Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games. And we're going to look at Shadowdark, which, as I've said before, is really just another version of Dungeons & Dragons. It's got an old-school feel to it, but also it's using modern mechanics as well. Not all of them, but some of them. The ones that obviously Kelsey thought was worth keeping. And we're going to look at the Umber Hulk. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hang on. Umber Hulk, isn't that an IP monster? Isn't that something that you really can't mess with? Well, as it happens, I was looking through here. I had already built or started building an Umber Hulk stat block for Shadowdark. And then I discovered that the book actually had the Umber Hulk it was called something else. She had gone through there and obviously made some adjustments and called it a different name. Okay? It's called the Cave Brute in this book, and it's literally in the core rule book. It's on page 200, and I thought, okay, well, I've made my Umber Hulk. I should compare it to Kelsey's obviously made a version as well, just called it the Cave Brute. I should compare it and see what it does, and that's where we're at today. I would prefer to make monsters that have not already been made in the core rule book, and I don't plan to do this again, if at all. But for this live stream today, I want to show how me making it, not knowing that it was here, and the end result to what Kelsey's version is like, might be quite useful to you, because surprisingly, you can come to different conclusions as you go. And that's an interesting sort of design problem for those of you who are trying to make your own stuff. So before I get started, I have a document already, 2 documents actually, that I'm going to be sharing with you. But I want to first go into, and I believe Burrowing Behemoth, I like the idea, Fred Huber. It is another alternative name you could call it. I think it's probably, if anything, I think that's probably the better version that I have heard from anybody. I think that's probably, would I say it's more in line with what you think it is? Maybe. Anyway, I'm going to put in a question to you. Okay, I like to do this in my live chats. What do you think the Umber Hulk in Shadowdark's stat block needs? Okay, what do you think the Umber Hulk and the Shadowdark stat block needs? This is really my question to you. And everybody's going to feel a little bit differently about this. But yeah, that's my question. And so we're going to go straight into our document that I have for today. All right, have I got this all lined up? Oh, hopefully. Looks like a few things have moved around. I had to do some testing before today, as it happened. Here we go. This is it. This is what I have. And so this project is in conjunction with AJ Pickett, who has a YouTube channel, deals with monster lore. You'll find down in the description, you'll find a link to his channel and the Umber Hulk monster lore for that. You'll also find a link to a Shadowdark players expansion for Shadowdark RPG, which myself, AJ Pickett, and Mitchell Reed, Wally DM, and David Bailey are involved in. We created it. It's pay what you want. You can get classes and ancestries, and we're going to make a monster book at some point. It's going to happen. So this is all the sort of lore. We're going to deal with it later. Right now we're just dealing with a stat block. So this is what I started with. I thought this was a good starting point. Okay. So the Umber Hulk, the burrowing behemoth. Let's take Fred Huber's suggestion. I had here in something else. I think it was confusing beetle, something like, or dazing beetle, or something like that. A tall, muscular, humanoid armored beetle with mandibles and 4 eyes. Okay, this insectoid monster creates tunnels and confuses prey with its glare. That's sort of where we're at. And now, the first thing we need to sort of establish is how big of a difference does this that I've started to build have with the cave brute? It's actually fairly significant. I made the Umber Hulk a level 8 monster. And the level that Kelsey has gone for is level 6. And it's based off 5e, a lot of maths. It's based off this book. And the Umber Hulk in you know, the 5e monster manual is actually a challenge rating 5 monster. So she hasn't used exactly the same level as 5e to make the Shadowdark monster. She's gone up a little bit. She's obviously decided that it needed to be a little bit stronger. I actually think it needs to be a lot stronger because I went right back and I looked at Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. First printing, or first version, and the second, and it has 8 hit dice. I think it needs to be a level 8 monster. So I've put down level 8. In terms of its, you know, alignment, I think she had down as neutral for the cave brute. And I looked at how it was lining up, and it is listed in AD&D as an evil creature. So we're going to go with it being a level 8 monster, and not a level 6 or level 5. I'm going to make it chaotic because that's more in line with chaotic evil. That's sort of where my head was at with this monster. And then its stats. Now its stats, you can't really get your stats off AD&D because they don't break it down quite the same way as modern D&D does. So you're now looking at picking up like the 5e monster manual, or you know, the 2024. It's pretty similar. It's not exactly the same. It's pretty similar. I did look at that monster stat block as well when I was doing this. And so one of the things you just go through your stats and you have a look and see if it's going to work. Well, it's listed in the monster manual for strength. The modifier is a +5, and its dexterity is a +1. Its constitution is +3, so that's why C is +3. Its intelligence, we better make sure we bold that, is supposed to be a -1, okay, and its wisdom is a 0 modifier and 0 modifier for charisma. Okay, so we've got all that. So we've done some of the work that needs to be done. Now there's a couple of things we can do. I have a table which is available on my Patreon for free, so you can go and get it. And there's a link down in the description to my Patreon. Free members can download this, and you can use that to help make your monsters for Shadowdark. So if we have a look at level 8, and we look at sort of the modifier range for them, you'll notice that the lowest modifier is usually about a -4, and the highest end tends to be a +5. One of the things I did notice is that Kelsey has not used exactly the same modifiers for her cave brute. So we can go as high as a 5. So it doesn't really matter too much that we have a strength of +5. That's all good. She went and made it a +4. So she's toned it down a little bit. I think that is more because it is a level 6 monster rather than what I'm doing here, which is a level 8 monster. I think level 8, considering what it can do, is probably more in line, just because it's a control monster. It can really mess you up pretty badly. But not only that, it's really tough. It's got a lot of attacks and it can do a lot of damage. And that in itself means we need to be fairly careful with how we build our monster, right? So she's gone with a +4 rather than a +5. But dexterity, she's left as +1. Constitution was a +3 here for the original stat block from 5e. I've kept it. She pushed it down to a +1. And I think that's because she didn't want it to have the extra 2 hit points. It's not a big difference. It's only just another 2 hit points. And for level 8, considering my group are now gone from level 0 through to level 9, I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem. So we're going to leave that. I think it'll be fine. Intelligence, she's actually dropped down and made it, like a -3. Now the problem is when I looked at AD&D and the Umber Hulk, which is what the Cave Brute's based off, that she's created, it does say that it's not that stupid. It's actually relatively intelligent. Now you could say, well, no, it's not intelligence, it's wisdom, right? It's good at trapping, and it's good at setting and making up, making decisions in its environment. So that's more wisdom rather than book learning and intelligence and stuff like that. -1, I'm going to leave it at that. So that's the only real big difference with intelligence, is I've got -1, she's got -3. And then we go to wisdom. She's made it a +1, and I'm going to leave it as just a 0 modifier. It's average. It's average. I don't think it's super great. It's just average compared to, I guess, a human, I guess. And then charisma, she's got here -3, and I'm just going to leave it as 0. Okay, I think that's fine. So those are the big differences between the Cave Brute and the Umber Hulk, or the Burrowing Behemoth that I've got here. Okay, next, it's armor class. Its armor class is 18 in 5e. Like if we have a look at the stat block for 5e, you'll notice it's 18. Natural armor, I'm all good with that. I don't have a problem with it having lots of really tough natural armor. It's not the end of the world as far as I'm concerned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that alone and look at my table to see if that table suggests that this would be a bad idea. This would make it quite difficult to hit this creature. It's not going to be that easy, right? One of the things I've discovered is that level 8 characters can quite often, even if their modifiers aren't that great, particularly fighters, they can pump up those numbers by using talent rolls. And more than likely they will have a reasonably good attack bonus or spellcasting modifier. So it's not the end of the world. Spellcasting modifier is really not a big issue. It's really attack bonus because you're dealing with armor class, right? So is it a big problem? Well, here, level 8, what is our armor class that we expect? Anywhere from 11 to 18. We're right at the top end. And I think that something like the Umber Hulk that's covered in armor probably should be a top end armor class, particularly for level 8. If we were level 6, it could still be an 18. So I'm going to leave it as is. I don't think it's a big issue. We can leave it. Okay, right now we've got to deal with the number of hit points this monster has. Now there's an easy formula for figuring out the number of hit points for a monster in Shadowdark. And that is, it's 8-sided dice. So if you look at the bottom of my table, it says hit points for monsters are determined by an 8-sided dice. This is what Kelsey has said. So use 4.5, which is the average. This is the norm. Multiply it by the monster level and add the constitution modifier once. Not more than once, just once. It only goes on once. So you can see why that +1 to +3 for con really is not a big issue. It's not a huge problem, if you ask me. So we take that concept and we'll use that to build our hit points. So 4.5, and if we multiply that by 8, which is the monster level, we get 36, and then we're going to add our con modifier, which is 3, and we get 39, which is why hit points are 39. Okay, and we'll see the table here for level 8 suggests that your hit points for your monster should be between 35 and 40, and we got 39, so we're at the top end. But it's an Umber Hulk, so it kind of makes sense that it should be at the top end. Average would be, say, a 36. So that's sort of where we're in the right ballpark. We've got that right. Okay. Next thing, let's deal with its attacks. Now, it's got a claw attack and a mandible attack in 5e. It is reasonably well spelled out. It's got multi-attack. We don't have to necessarily do that. It tends to attack with its claws more than its mandibles, but we would like to engage both of them and do something with them. And we don't want to make the stat block too heavy and too difficult to manage, so we just have to make sure that we don't get carried away. So let's give it 2 attacks with its claws and 1 attack with the mandibles. Now, how many attacks should a level 8 monster have in Shadowdark? Well, right now it's got 2 claws and 1 mandible on its turn. Or it can use the gaze effect, which we'll come back to. So if we look at level 8, how many attacks should we have? It says here number of attacks between 3 and 4. So we've given it 3, not 4 attacks, but 3. And the reason I haven't given it 4 attacks is because of the gaze. The gaze could potentially affect a lot of individuals in your group. And if you can get it to work, it's probably one of the preferred things you would want to do. But it's also you know, it's just there as okay, let's at least give you the feeling of this monster. It's not just tough, it's not just badass in combat, but it's also potentially going to mess with you in some way. And so what I discovered with her Cave Brute is she's gone with 2 claw attacks, okay, and that's it. Also 2 claw attacks and a mandible attack. So she's gone with 3 attacks, and you'll notice for a level 6 monster, she's gone with the top end with 3 attacks, and I'm going with just 3 attacks at level 8. I don't think it's a big issue if you ask me. I think it'll be fine. The amount of damage that she's having the monster do is between as 8 and 10. For me, I'm like, is there a big enough reason that the claws and the mandible should have a significant difference in the amount of damage that they do? It's really just flavor, which is why I condensed them. And basically, you'll notice that 2 claws and then 1 mandible, it's the same attack bonus and it's the same damage. I've just gone with 1d8. We could push that up to 1d10 for level 8 characters. That would actually be fine. I don't think that's a big problem. This is a monster that, you know, level 5 characters, usually any Shadowdark character playing the game with a class, if you're dealing with a monster that's 3 levels higher than them, that's about as high as you want to go. Unless you're level 9 or 10. Then you really can just push it and see what happens. All bets are off really at that point. But before that, before level 9 and 10, level 5, so what's 5, 6, 7, 8. So 3 level difference, it's not too bad. That would be a tough fight. Level 8 characters probably not going to have quite so much trouble with that. So I've just condensed it to make it a little bit shorter, added in the gaze. Now we could separate this if we wanted to, and make the amount of damage that the claws do and the mandibles do different. But looking at AD&D, I didn't see any real point. It didn't seem like it was absolutely necessary to do so. So I didn't worry about that. So I'm going to come back to the attack. Movement, let's deal with that. Near is basically anything that's more than 5 feet up to 30 feet, really. And it's burrowing, and it's just like the Cave Brute that Kelsey's done in the Shadowdark core rulebook. So I'd already, you can see you want it to coming to the same conclusions, very, very similar, not exactly the same, but very, very similar. Okay, let's deal with these attacks and how much damage we should be doing and how it should all work. So I think the number of attacks is fine. Now the attack bonus for level 8 monsters, if you have a look at here, it can change, right? So if you're level 8, you should be having an attack bonus of between 5 and 9. 9 being at the top end, and I've made it 7, so we're kind of in the middle. Why have I done that? Frankly, because I've found that monsters that have an attack bonus that's equal to their monster level are probably the best number to have, and either 1 point or 2, or 1 point down or 1 point up. So anything between +7 and +9 for level 8 monsters actually probably the sweet spot, if you ask me. There's a lot of variation in Shadowdark. And it's quite hard when you're play testing and using monsters to determine whether it's a good idea or not. It may simply be that it just does not fucking matter, that you can have that variation. It's not a big deal, but it's really hard to pin it down because you can use spreadsheets, you can have tables, but tables and spreadsheets do not answer the reality of playing the game. You have to test things, and of course, you have to test them with the right people. If you test them with people who are new to a game and don't understand it, or dungeon masters who are new to a game system and don't understand it, your outcomes will always be very different. It's going to be flexy. So this is all based on somebody that, I'm pretty experienced as a game master for D&D. All the people in my group are all game masters, right? So Simon is a game master, played D&D for years, right back to AD&D. JP's a dungeon master, played basic D&D right back that, and he's played lots of different versions. Kirsty is a Dungeon Master. She's played right back to version 3. John played right back to AD&D, I think, and version 3. I can't remember exactly. He's a Dungeon Master. Cajun's played, I can't remember how many different versions of D&D, but I think at least version 3, and he's one of the younger ones, but he's also a game master. And then of course AJ Pickett, who's joined my group and he's playing with us, and he's a Dungeon Master, and he's played right back to AD&D and Basic as well. So there's lots of experience. So they're really skilled players, and I've played a lot of it. So our testing is based off the top end rather than completely new people. So if you're thinking in terms of completely new people, yeah, it's going to be a bit different in terms of your outcomes. Okay, that waffling is done. I should have a waffle about that some other time, but not right now, right? Stop it, Fred. So we're going to leave our attack bonus. That's good. Our damage output could be different. We could change that potentially. We could go up by a 1 more dice increment if we really wanted to. I don't think it would really matter. I don't really see much point in separating and worrying about whether the claws do more or the mandibles do more. But the cave brute that Kelsey's put together does. Now let's get to its special abilities. Now one of the things that 5e had done is they had included Tunneler. And I was looking back at AD&D, and AD&D did stipulate a difference between digging through certain types of materials. So digging through sort of loose dirt, it's got its speed. It goes quite quick. It can dig very fast, in fact. You might even say it can dig probably faster than 30 feet or near distance. But moving double near underground is kind of crazy for something like Shadowdark or even D&D full stop. So we probably don't want to be doing that. That's why I didn't do it, okay? So I left it with near. It's got a burrow speed, but we wanted to add a little bit more. So I've put in here tunnel, or tunnel. I should put in tunneler. Or is it digger, tunneler? I think it's called tunneler. Yeah, and I just put tunnel. Let's just put here, instead of tunneler, let's just put digger. That's what it is. Dig through solid rock at half burrow speed. So in other words, you're going half the distance. That's really easy to do. Something like Shadowdark, if you're going to affect distance, halving things is the smartest thing to do. You're not deducting 5 foot, 10 foot, 15 foot, 20 foot. That doesn't matter. You need to deal with, you double it or you halve it, which is really probably the easiest way to approach everything. Particularly something like difficult terrain, you're halving the distance you can move. That's really all you're doing, okay? So this is the best way, I think, to sort of make that streamlined. Does this feature need to exist? Maybe not, but I've left it there. It's not in the Cave Brute. She did not include it. The next one, Gaze. Now, she's called it Bewilder. And one of the things I noticed is what I've written down and what she's written down is extremely similar, just slightly different wording. So this is what I've put down. Any creature the Umber Hulk looks at, so you have to look at them, which means that's why gaze is under the action section. So you get to either do your claws and your mandible attack, or you don't do any of that and you just gaze. So you could potentially look at all the characters as long as they can be seen and they're in view. You can look at all of them. That means they need to make a DC 15 charisma check within near range, so that's about 30 feet at the maximum, which is fine. So it's not far distance. You don't want to make it too easy to mess with people, right? And then if they fail it, they're paralyzed for 1 round. So that's really simple, really easy to apply. Now, how does the Bewilder and the Cave Brute in this book work? Well, it reads this way, and I was really quite surprised. Creatures within near range, basically, within near, that see the Cave Brute's eyes, so they have to actually look at the Cave Brute's eyes. I felt like that was going to cause problems, because then the players would just say, I will look at anything but the Cave Brute's eyes. I think it needs to come down to the Cave Brute looking at the creature rather than the other way around. Okay, otherwise it's too hard to adjudicate. It's too easy to get around. Okay, and she's got here DC 12 charisma at start of their turn, or dazed and no action. So basically being dazed means you get no action. You don't get to use an action. Maybe you can move I've put down paralyzed. Paralyzed suggests, and you'll find if you've played Shadowdark before, paralyzed suggests what? No action, no movement. So you're just stuck. You're stuck where you are for one round. It is actually very similar. The only difference is that what I've done is stops your movement, not just your action, and she's just trying to stop you from casting a spell or making an attack or using your action, but you could still potentially move around, okay? And the DC's lower, but this monster's level 8 and hers is level 6. So there's still a little bit of a difference that can occur when you're making your own monsters and converting them over compared to, say, something like Shadowdark. Now, maybe you won't have the same difference. Maybe you'll use, you'll only take the numbers from 5e and transfer them over to Shadowdark, and that is that. But I found that the transfer over from Shadowdark from 5e is not always exact. There is differences. So yeah, something to bear in mind. Okay, let's have a look at chat and see what people have to say. I'll be interested to see. Ooh, we got a bit. There's a few comments here. Let's have a look here. So, strong armor due to its hard outer shell. That's why we're going to keep the armor class 18. Senses the vibrations of things moving. Now, one of the things you've got to be careful about in Shadowdark is trying to spell out every sodding thing. Every sodding thing. If you define every sodding thing in Shadowdark in your monster stat block, your stat block starts to bloat. Just like the 5e stat blocks are bloating, and just like the 2024 monster stat blocks are bloating. They're bloating, they're becoming actually unusable. There's too much blooming information to work with. So what you do is you use the narrative of your monster to determine how it functions. Okay, so the narrative for the Umber Hulk that I've written down, this insectoid monster creates tunnels. Okay, we could say digs tunnels. Digs tunnels and confuses prey with its glare. And that really that should give you enough to figure out how this all works. It burrows underground. There's no real sort of tremor sense in Shadowdark. It's really kind of not necessary. I mean, it's going to be underground most of the time. It's not going to be above ground. So it's not really using its eyes to see things. Right here, Fred Huber. Fred Huber's a patron and a moderator, by the way. Blunt force from its arm swings. Okay, so we don't have to... Damage in Shadowdark is not defined. It's not piercing damage, slashing damage, or bludgeoning. It's just damage. It really doesn't matter. It's not that high defined. So blunt force damage, arm swings, grappling, crushing with the mandibles. So something like grappling would just be a stat check. Okay? So you just count that as like, okay, so how many grapples do I want to give it? It's got 3 attacks, so maybe it can do 3 potential grapples, or grapple something and then attack it. We don't need to tie all of that stuff in. I've found that this works quite well in the game. What I do in Shadowdark is, if the monster says it does 3 attacks, then I could potentially do 3 grapples. So I decide, do I want to grapple first and then make the other attacks? Or do I want to do the claw attack and then the bite attack, and then do I want to grapple last? Or do I want to grapple first and then make the other attacks, and does it make sense that they would still be able to do damage doing that? So it's just about the game master figuring out what makes sense. I agree, claws should do quite a bit of blunt or crushing damage due to mass of body and hardness of chitin. I feel like AD&D would treat mandibles as proxy weapons like twin sabers. Yeah, I got the Monster Manual AD&D first year, and it's close to 3 1d8 fighter level would be killed by 3 attacks landing. yeah, maybe, yes. No. So Shadowdark doesn't use a cone. Usually it's going to be a cube because it's easy to navigate. A near cube would be basically about 30 foot by 30 foot, and you position it however you need to. That is the closest to a cone you're going to really get. Even a sphere is kind of shaped like that. It makes it actually quite easy. Like, fireball is basically just a near cube. It's really, really easy to work with. So there's not a lot of messing around with area. And I play most of my Shadowdark as Theatre of the Mind. On average, level 3 paladin with a decent constitution would expire or be near death if hit by all 3 of the Umber Hulk attacks. And that could potentially happen in Shadowdark as well. I used to run confused as move random direction. Yes, now I thought about that, and no other movement. Stands confused with no action other than movement. Yeah, and I think that's why I wanted to go with paralyzed. Just stand, do nothing, and no make no attack, no cast no spells, do nothing with your action, and just not move as well. It's actually really simple, much simpler. It's the sort of thing you would want. You know, insects are supposed to have, some insects have got eyes that actually can hypnotize you, and basically you just shut down. You just sit, and the reason that shutting you down is so that they can eat you, right? Same with the Umber Hulk. So that's why I built it that way. So I think that's probably the best way to approach it, in my opinion. Just make it life really, really simple for yourself. Now, how much damage do we want to do? Because I haven't gone to the top end, maybe we'll trim our damage up rather than keeping it low. Because I could go as far as having 4 attacks. But 4 attacks, frankly, high-level monsters is a pain in the ass. I'm at the point where I'm running monsters that are, you know, level 11, 10, 9, and it's not that much fun, even in Shadowdark, to have to roll that many attacks. So let's go with 1d10, mandibles and claws, make it really simple, nice and easy to remember, and you got your gaze. Your gaze works this way. We'll keep the DC where it is. Now, if you look at the table for the gaze, okay, level 8 monsters, what's your DCs likely to be? Between 9 and 18. I've gone with 15. 18 I feel like is much better for a level 9 to 10 monsters where you know the thing, you know, it's a boss monster. Umber Hulks aren't really boss monsters, but they can be tough monsters, right? So that is what I would do myself with the Umber Hulk or the burrowing behemoth or the cave brute. That's how I would go about building it. I think that's probably much smarter. But I can see you just using the cave brute stock standard from the Shadowdark book and it'd be perfectly fine. There'd be nothing wrong with it. Okay? So, yes. Interesting sort of breakdown when you look at how you could potentially build and make something. There's room for movement. And the great thing about it is, unlike 5e, Shadowdark monsters are actually pretty easy to build. They're actually, if you look at how they're built, you can do this stuff. You don't need somebody else doing it for you. Meals, it likes its meals to wiggle. It's favoured soft flesh. Overeating dirt for minerals. Could be. Anyway, I'm going to end this poll. Is that the end of the poll there? Okay. So, do you like Shadowdark monster stat block design? Okay. Yes, 62%. Just watching, 25%. Undecided, 12%. I totally understand it. Like, it's hard to be sold on something unless you have used the stat blocks in a game. And one of the things that myself and AJ commented on and thought about when we were looking at how to go about designing stat blocks for Shadowdark is we felt like a lot of the nuance to a monster was lost because Shadowdark boils things down to the most important things and leaves out a lot of the fine nuance that 5e and Pathfinder and other more complicated systems use. And we're like, okay, does that really matter? And what I've discovered is it fucking well doesn't matter. It really doesn't. My players just recently had to deal with vampires and they were level 8 and man, those vampires were rough. It was tough for them. It is unusual to be playing at the top end of a progression system and find that your players are still actually fighting for their lives. It's great that that's what's happening, and that is because of the way the monsters are designed. And it's weird that they still threaten characters that are level 8 and 9, or even level 7, 8, 9, with the monsters design that is here in this game. I'm really surprised because the monsters have such a huge variation in the numbers. The only thing that doesn't vary that much is the number of attacks that it gets. The number of hit points is almost, that formula is spot on just about every single time. You'll never find that it varies that much. But the variation in difficulty classes for special abilities, armor class varies widely. The attack bonus is actually, it's not hugely wide, but it's still relatively wide. There's a lot of room for movement. And I know why. It's because it's much more bound in terms of accuracy. Bound accuracy is supposed to be in 5e. This is far more bound. But it seems to work. And I keep playing it, and my players keep saying, we still feel like we are playing at level 1, and we're level 8 and 9 now. Holy Toledo. They're really impressed. I am too. They are power gamers. They know how to play. I've been running monsters for a while, so I know what I'm doing with them. Also, too, possibly, maybe I'll say it. I'm maybe just a little bit of a dick sometimes because I'm trying to see how far I can push things. But they're doing fine. In fact, yeah, I'll discuss that some other time. So you love the clean monster stat block design. It's very much OSR. Yes, it is. It is. But it still gives you lots of information. I find myself going back to the fact, like, okay, how much information do I need? And there's just the right amount of information. It's quite surprising. So for those of you who are happy with the way I've built the Umber Hulk, great. For those of you who don't like it, use the Cave Brute, because that is actually the Umber Hulk in the core rule book. And if you don't like it, then you can use this one. I'll put it up onto Patreon at the end of the week, okay, when I get a chance to sort of get to it. And there will be lots of other monsters there. It'll be part of the paid patron tier. And for those of you who want the free table so you can make your own stuff, and I want you to make your own stuff, go do it. This is part of the free tier. The other one is part of the paid tier. So if I make a monster, paid tier, this to make your own stuff, free tier, okay? It's just, otherwise this channel does not function anymore, and so I've got to do it that way. And we can put aside the 5e Umber Hulk. We don't really need it anymore. And yes, and move on to hopefully a good time. It's going to be really interesting to see how this game continues to play out. Once I get to level 10, and we've tried as many of the monsters as possible, I have a far better idea of what's going on. And I can start testing more of them. That's another thing that I'm really sort of looking forward to, is an opportunity to test the monsters to see how do they pan out. Are they working the way that they need to? It's a really important factor, right? It's just figuring out if they will work. I'm going to put in my Discord. You can join it. You do not have to be a patron to join the Discord. Yes, I am over there from time to time. Do Umber Hulks find other Umber Hulks attractive? Do they gaze at each other's eyes? Dear. Good question. Go and watch AJ Pickett's video and he'll probably tell you. Anyway, I'm going to get going. We're going to be back next week, and I thought I'd do Slard or Slardy or what the heck. Basically, it's the Xeno. It's the alien creature. Really, it's a frog alien creature. I thought it would be fun to try and give that a whirl, see what we get out of it. Should be very, very entertaining. But anyway, I'm going to get going. I will be back next week, as I said. So thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. Huge thank you to all of my patrons who support me on Patreon, because it's important that there's somebody there doing that. Otherwise, I'd probably just vanish like most channels are right now. And I also really want to thank those people in chat, Matthew and Fred Huber. Huge thank you for your feedback and your ideas. It's good to have a discussion in there so I can see what's going on. Really, really happy that there's somebody interacting with this. I know this is not 5e or 2024, but honestly think that you'll find that Shadowdark is probably where you want to go for a fast playing game, which is easy to run, easy to understand, and yeah, for me it's the future. So wherever you are in the world. Oh, by the way, thank you for those people who took part in that poll. I really do appreciate it. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Yeah, be nice to your neighbours. Be nice to your neighbours. As long as they're nice to you, you should be nice to them. And until next time, keep rolling those 20s.